Welcome back to RSA Conference 2022. It's day 2, and we're still recording live at the Marriott Marquis. I'm your host, Matt Alderman. Joining me for this segment is Sonali Shah. She is the Chief Product Officer at Invicta Security. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We love Invicta. You guys have been such a great partner of ours over the years, and you just hired a great CMO sitting in the back of the room.
Oh,
So,
Alex is the best. We're lucky to have
he
him.
is. We're going to talk about cultural blind spots
Yeah.
and DevSecOps. Let's start with the challenges of the DevSecOps teams today. When you think about the last 2+ years, what's going on with the developers? They've been under a lot of pressure to take businesses and completely transform them from where they were to like accelerating digital transformation overnight. And that's had to create a lot of stress for these teams. What are you seeing with your customers and in these development teams? What's going on?
Yes. So, we recently did a survey of a couple hundred, both developers as well as security professionals, to understand what the past couple of years has done to them. What has been the impact of COVID? And really, the stress levels have increased. And there's kind of two things happening. One is on the development side, as you said, digital transformation. Web applications are the way our customers communicate with their partners, their employees, their own customers, right? So there's this incredible stress put on developers because they need to constantly be releasing new code and enhancing the applications they have, right? So that's one piece of it. But then on the other side, we're seeing an increase in the number of cyber attacks. In fact, year over year, just the number of vulnerabilities found only goes up. It never goes down, right?
Yeah.
And now you've got this added dimension where you've got not just the normal kind of ransomware, cyber criminal types, you've got the political ones too, right? So a lot of companies that decided not to do business in certain parts of the world were attacked, right? So you've got this combination of increased desire to innovate and rapidly release new software, but then also this incredibly rapidly growing threat landscape. And that is what causes a lot of tension, both for dev and sec.
Right, exactly. And the concept of DevSecOps has been around for a while. We were talking DevSecOps and shift left before the pandemic. So this is not a new concept. The question is, how do you solve it in a very remote world now? Like, you can't this is the first time we've been face to face in over 2 years. A lot of us, the last time we were together was at this event in March of 20, right before everything shut down. And as developers and as engineering teams and people who are used to being in offices and working closely together, going remote also created a whole new set of challenges for development teams. How do they collaborate? How do they make sure that the code that they're writing also is going through the security checks? Like, how has this shift also impacted this as well?
Absolutely. We have over 3,000 customers, and they're all at different stages in their DevSecOps journey. And the ones that I find are the most successful, there's really two pieces to it. There is the technology side as well as the cultural side.
Right.
So on the technology side, how do we make sure that developers are thinking about security throughout their kind of day-to-day jobs? And it's not an afterthought, right? There's this concept of security debt and the security poverty line, right?
Yeah.
And in order to avoid building up further security debt, the only way to do it is to automate it. Right? So you think about credit card payments today, right? Like, who waits till the bill comes and then pays it? It's just auto pay. It's automated.
Right.
And that's where we see, customers that are most successful in doing DevSecOps have it automated, and it's automated within the developer's existing tool chain.
Right.
Whether they're using Jira or Jenkins or Slack, it's got to be automated into it.
Yeah.
And then there's also, I feel like, been a bit of an overemphasis on the shift left. Because yes, you want to shift left, you want to get vulnerabilities where it's easiest, fastest, cheapest to fix. But let's face it, things are going to be released in production.
Right.
And the threat landscape is always changing. So what was secure today may not be secure tomorrow.
Right.
So security needs to be automated, but you need to shift it left and shift right. So continuously be scanning even when things are live.
Yeah, I think the challenge in this space is there is a set of static checks along the CI/CD pipeline, right?
Right.
During the continuous integration deployment pipeline, there are integration points of technology that work within the existing tool set that manages the static side of the application, right? But to your point, once that application's been deployed in production, I still have to monitor it
Yes.
in the runtime world, in the dynamic world,
Yes.
as it's running. And I think the challenge in the industry has been, how do you balance both of those? How do you shift static checks left and making sure that the tooling is embedded within the developer tool sets, but also still monitoring it and looking for the variations and then creating the feedback loops.
Right.
It's it's learning from the runtime to influence the static and vice versa, so that they complement each other. You could be doing great on the runtime side, but if you're not doing this, or great on the static side and not doing this, it's really bringing those two capabilities together.
Yeah. And I would say automation there again is really important. So if one of the things you need to do is first understand your risk profile, right? So what are all the things you've got out there in development as well as in production? And then you've got, just as important it is to automate in development, you've got to automate in production so that your high critical, your critical applications you're scanning nightly or weekly, or maybe some you're scanning monthly, but that then those results, first of all, the scans have to be kicked off automatically.
Right.
Then the results automatically have to flow into whatever ticketing system.
Into a remediation workflow of some sort, right?
So just automation is key, both in shifting left and shifting right, and sort of bringing it all together so that the developers can stay in their existing workflow, get the information they need on what to fix, when to fix it within their workflow, and then have the support they need. So I mentioned that there's a technology piece and a culture piece.
Right.
And so making sure that developers have, that there's security champions on the development teams that they can go to for help, making sure that your developers have, secure code training, and that the other thing is that it's not just giving it to them, but making sure that security is made something that's visible across the company, right? And so that's top down.
Yeah.
That mandate that yes, it's just as important to innovate on our applications, but also to keep it secure.
Right.
And if you have that culture throughout the industry with the automation piece of it, that's really what I think works for a lot of our customers.
So let's talk about that cultural piece for a second, because when I think about where we've been, security on one side, developers on the other side. Security is always late to the party, always wanting to slow down the developers and deploying into code. So as you think about security champions programs, is it security inserting folks into the development side? Is it development side, kind of working? How do these security champion programs succeed well? Where does it start? Does it start on the development side? Does it start on the security side? Like, how would you build one of these programs? Because I think it's very important to remove the friction between those two teams that have traditionally been there. But who initiates it, and how do you structure the program to work well? Because I think that's still a challenge for a lot of organizations.
It absolutely is. It has to be developer led, right? So supported by security, but it's got to be development teams taking the lead. So I was recently speaking with a customer of ours, a global bank based in Paris, and the gentleman was saying, they started this security champions program, and he didn't expect many developers to volunteer to be champions. And he was surprised at how many people he got, because he's like, look, they take pride in their work, and security is just as important as quality. And these people actually, this is an opportunity for them to learn more about security and then share best practices with their colleagues. And by the way, anything security related on your resume or LinkedIn profile is just an added benefit, for developers. So from his, I thought that was just a really good way to think about it, is when it's developer led, they themselves are taking ownership of what they produce, and then you've got security supporting. That's, I think, what makes for the most successful programs.
So then what does security do to support those champions that have volunteered? Is it training? What is it that they actually need from the security teams to be successful? How does that, engagement, that relationship start? What does security give back then to the development teams?
No, it is absolutely training. And I think that, a lot of the tools, like I know with our tool at Invicta, we're putting remediation advice in the, say, Jira ticket, whatever it is, right? So that the developer has the information they need to fix it. But there's always going to be cases where it's difficult or something's not clear, right? And then they have to go back. But if developers can go first, hopefully they've got a tool that's, first of all, accurate and actionable.
Right.
That's, an assumption
That's
I'm making
half
that
the
you've
battle.
had. Right. And if you've got, accurate and actionable results, then I think that, developer can often fix things on their own. If not, they go to their security champion, the person on their team that is the security expert. And if they're not able to help, you still have security there helping out.
Yeah.
But the reality is, and this, the talent shortage in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Right? It's never going to scale if every single question has to go to the security person.
Exactly. And I think this has been the big challenge in vulnerability management for a long time, even excluding application vulnerabilities for a second, right? Yes, we had the data. Then we would take that data and we'd send it over to the IT team, in this case, the development team, right? The developer team, said, okay, fix all your vulnerabilities. But if they don't know what to fix or how to fix it, it's not going to get fixed. So then that list just continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger, which doesn't help either. So to your point, remediation, guidance, but do we see the opportunity to automate some of these fixes in the future? I'm a big fan of automation because we do have a lack of skills and resources out there. Are there things that can be kind of automated on the remediation side? Are you starting to see organizations try to go down that path, or does it still need a developer to make the fixes in the code and before it can get back into production?
So, there's been a lot of buzz around this auto remediation, AL, AI, ML type solutions. I'm hopeful. And I think there will be some things that we can auto-remediate. I just haven't seen the adoption yet because it's still new, the technology. And it is scary to auto-remediate and then break something.
Right.
Like say you're an e-commerce company and you fix something, which is great, but then now you've broken the link and people can't check out.
Right. Yeah, I remember this in the early days of intrusion prevention systems when we tried to do active blocking in the network. And the old IPS days. So, I mean, we still have some of that stigma, but hopefully simple things like updating a library and running it back through the QA testing cycle to remove a vulnerability in an open source component. We should be able to remediate
that
those
is where
things,
I'm seeing some traction.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the open source side because you know that it's out of date.
Right.
You know which one you need to pull. The question is, though, if you pull the latest, is it going to break something?
Exactly right. So you still got to run it through the QA checks and the tests and make sure from a regression standpoint it's still working. But that would be, I think, a really easy use case to remediate around.
Yeah, that is where I'm seeing some progress, but still early days.
Early days. What's next for Invicta? You've done a great job of pulling together two great products with NetSparker and Acunetics. As Invicta continues to evolve, where does the product set go next?
Yeah. So we're the best in DAST, and we will always be the best in DAST. And DAST is, for your audience, if they don't know, dynamic application security testing. Yeah. What is so powerful about DAST is you can shift left and shift right with it.
Yeah.
You don't need the source code, right? And, we were talking about automation. Automation only works if you've got great accuracy and speed, right? So we're continuously investing in DAST. That'll always be part of our roadmap. Especially like around API security now,
right?
With the latest frameworks, you constantly have to update that. Yeah. So that's key. We have recently launched SCA and IAST. We've got support for a couple of languages. Definitely building that out.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
We've got discovery, which is mapping your attack surface.
Right.
And so one of the things we're looking at is how do we help customers decide or prioritize what to scan and what to fix.
Right. So by understanding the assets, right, and doing some of the risk assessment around those applications, How often should I scan them? Where are the priorities to fix
Yeah.
them based on their risk levels? Yeah.
Yeah. So these are all areas, because the number one thing I hear from customers, well, I should say two things. One is they don't like working with all these separate tools. They want to see things together, right?
Yes.
Which is hence our investment also in open source security, because that's also very important, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the SCA, the ISPs, but also, as you scan more applications and you scan more frequently, you're going to find more. And how do you know what to prioritize?
Right.
So that is something really that we are working on, because there's a lot of information we can gather externally.
Yep.
And then with some information also from customers, we can then come up with scoring and saying, all right, these are the top 10 things you should do first.
Great solution, because that's where you can really bridge the gaps between security and development.
Right.
Prioritize it.
Prioritize it.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Sonali, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's fun.
Yes. If anybody wants to learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/Invicti RSA. And with that, we're going to take a quick break, but stay tuned. We have more interviews coming up.